Yep.
We all covered that.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, that's not surprising at all. Probably could have told me that like 3 weeks ago, but it's fine.
We're gonna start with look at.
Okay, so can we get that in?
I already have it pulled up. I'm gonna post it from my computer and then write the code on the board for everyone to see.
Let's get that going, because I got to go walk back and get the copies when they're done.
All right.
Okay, Mushi, I need you to take your headphones out, and close the door, and take down lights 1, 2, and 4, please. Need the conversation to stop so I can talk to the Zoom students, please. Ashton, get in your seat. Zoom students, thank you for your patience. We had an issue with the copy machine. This packet is 20-some pages long. It is in the exact same location that all the other packets are, along with the slides. So I would encourage you to go get that and upload it, as it may take you a moment. Second thing then is, you need to get onto the Zoom then, right?
No, because it's all on their screen.
Okay, so you are supposed to go to blookit.com, apparently. Is that the, how does one spell this? BLOOKET.com. So I put it in the chat box. And the, oh, it came out as bloke. Well, it's supposed to be blookit.com. Don't go to bloke.com. I don't know what that is. Could be weird. Sorry, Zoom students. I said cut the conversations. I'm having a conversation with our friends online. Stop. Okay. So this code for the Blookit is apparently 75Q. 0238. Now, those of you that are presenting, who's in charge of this? Okay, Jill, you need to make sure that you keep them informed of when you start, okay? So, get everybody on here. Make sure you get a thumbs up.
Okay, give me a thumbs up if you're logged in class.
Confirm with everybody.
And then how many people are on Zoom?
I don't know. We got Katya.
I saw a thumbs up from her.
We got Liliana. Do we have Lily Dole? Are you on the Blookit? Yes? Nope. No, you're not. Well, you need to do that. Nyla, are you on? Put it in the chat box. Thank you. Vivian, what are we doing? Are you on? Cool. Lily Dole, we're waiting for you. Are you there? Excellent. Okay. Let's get going, Jill.
All right, let's start it.
Apparently it has started.
You guys see the instructions on your screen, right? No. No.
Look up at her.
Oh, no. 1 second.
All you need to do is get on the Zoom and I'll share my screen with you.
It's pretty easy to understand.
Yeah, I think you guys can get it without instructions.
Okay,
It's
no-
literally just 1v1.
Yeah, you get paired up with someone and you like, I guess.
And you gotta think, you gotta get the question right before they do it. Okay.
What do you think Battle Royale is?
Okay, they're now going through the microphone, the Zoom students, so. Okay, does everyone have an opponent? Is that a yes? Okay, have fun. Okay, I need to go get the copies of the packet. When I come back, if it's loud in here, I have your group scheduling points. I have a tally look at. Everyone hear that? Hey.
Oh, let's go.
Oh, God.
Haley, I think I'm gonna lose.
No, I'm definitely gonna.
No.
Oh, God, this is World War II or World War I.
That says World War One.
Oh,
Dang. Oh, no. It's okay. Oh, it is? It did say one? Yeah. Me too, I was like,
Did you get it right?
Why is it harder to come up with big answers?
Yeah.
Ethan, you're
Did you
good.
answer that?
Sorry, Kelsey.
I got it right.
It's on the screen. It'll be.
Oh, Kaylee.
It'll be.
Let's go, Kaylee.
It's all.
I don't know. I just had to think it
That was a throwaway question.
Who said it's cold out?
It's cold in Russia. It's
22 later for me.
Sorry, Victoria. You're actually Luella. Let's go.
Katya versus Stanley. All right.
What?
Yo, come
Hey, I'm supposed to know this. Literally.
That's pretty something.
What if we both get it wrong?
Oh, I got it wrong. Oh, yeah. I'll be back. We both get it wrong.
Whoever takes it fastest.
1989 and Nelson was the best at time.
No, we got it right.
Oh, I forgot this one question.
I'm afraid of what the next one is. I will just remember.
Alright,
Okay, Lucy. I am too. Like.
Oh, I know.
You can see my screen though. I can't see.
No.
I didn't, but I included that. Like, there was a split thing here. I can always add it for the fun.
I am.
Lucy.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm saying.
I said
Which one do you go? I said. Did you go left?
Let's
Let's go.
Ashton.
I just took it.
Oh, I just skipped to make it go quicker.
Nice.
I'm smart.
One more energy.
I have one thing left.
That's it.
Oh, no.
Freaking guess.
I'm just gonna guess one.
I don't even know.
This is an obvious one. You know.
Please.
Hi, Mr. Burnett.
This and you see, packets used to only be allowed to be
Wow.
23. It's a little more than
Oh.
I'm used to.
Huh?
Oh, yeah. I know.
No, I think it's 31.
No, this one. No, yeah, it's 2000.
I see what this looks like.
I don't know.
You're right.
I don't know. I think I got
You're
it
right.
wrong. Yeah, I got it wrong.
You got it. No, you got it right.
Okay, that's me.
I answered it fast.
Oh, wait, did we both?
Are you planning on doing any other activities today or waiting for more?
This is our only activity for today.
Just double check.
Which I guess was expected, but I don't know.
Is the tree? I know it's just.
I would have beat 50.
All right. So I have one that is single sided here.
Okay.
Basically destroyed our H Hall printer. That's okay.
Way to go.
Let's go.
All right, so this is your project, correct?
Oh, I was.
Okay, those of you that are on Zoom, I'm now sharing the screen with you. This group is going to move forward with their information now. And this is the clicker. If any one of you would like to use it, I believe it'll click forward.
Okay, what should I do with these extra
I got
packets?
5 people left.
Just if you don't mind putting them on the stool, it's fine. You said there's still 5 people playing?
Yep.
Okay,
It's a
so
Battle
we're
Royale thing.
we're going to finish the Battle of Royale. In the meantime, if you've lost, you need to go through your packet and start to peruse this generous amount of information this group has provided to you.
Okay.
Don't count the pages, actually look at the information. It was 23 pages, I can tell you that, 'cause I printed it twice. No.
We're down to the final second to last round.
Who's left?
Lucy, I actually didn't pay attention. I'll just say next time.
Oh my god.
I would.
Hannah versus Vicky. Oh. Oh, God. Wait. I think I was definitely. What? Oh.
Did she get it right?
Okay. I knew it was Sputnik. I just know how to spell it. Okay, well, Vicky won, but she's in our group, so Hannah. No, I still have one more life.
You do? We do. Oh, she totally does.
Oh my.
We have one student.
All right, one last round. Because you guys are both down to one life. Please. No. I guess
If it's a tie, then everyone.
you can't all lose. Okay, we're gonna cut it there because it's getting too long.
Okay,
Luke, it's done. I'm still going. I closed the host.
okay, Lucy, you're gonna have to settle for tie for first, okay?
Well, it wasn't Lucy, it was Vicky and Hannah.
Oh, Vicky and Hannah, you're gonna have, I meant that, sorry, I just
Yeah, Lucy.
Freudian slip, sorry. Okay, are we ready to rock and
I'm
roll?
ready to rock and roll.
So can you turn the microphone in that direction towards you?
Like this.
Just, yep, bingo, and then just talk to that.
Talk, okay.
Oh, I have to talk to, I mean, if you stand over there.
Yeah,
they can hear
okay,
you, so.
okay. Okay, so this is 1900 to 2001. Buckle up. We already did that. So changes in global political order. I'm basically just gonna read off the packet, but I'll try and enrich you guys. So there was a lot of changes in the global political order. At the beginning of the time, Europe was like the world powerhouse. And even though it had flawed government systems, well, that actually like caused it to go down. So that was one change. And then there was a lot of innovation that took place, and that gave countries the ability to gain power, and it really increased tension and competition. And it helped overtake or catch up to really powerful countries. And then during this time period, there were, from that tension and competition from the innovation, there were conflicts that came, hence both world wars. And there was a lot of economic hardships and struggles. And it was difficult to maintain political stability from that. And there were cultural conflicts as well between religions and all sorts of different beliefs. And there was a lot of change that was wanted from the citizens and a lot of change taking place. There was a struggle with that. And then with the world wars, there were a lot of economic issues, especially in World War II, with like the United States doing all that like loans and stuff with other countries and basically becoming a world bank. And there was a lot of issues with finding jobs, and thus it made it difficult for people to provide for their families, and then that caused starvation and like all those different problems. And then the USSR played a huge role in this time period from World War I to World War II, and obviously the Cold War. And then after these wars, there's a bunch colonies under larger, more powerful countries fought for their independence and won. There's decolonization and more power spread out between the nations. There was a lot of conflicts and issues that came after decolonization. Like it was really difficult for countries to develop after being under these larger ones for such a long time. But yeah, they were able to make a name for themselves and allow for change and policies, and thus increasing global communication and such. And there were other events that led to political change, like the fact that while military defeats weakened others, it strengthened other nations, allowing them to become more advanced without much competition. So it kind of like evenly or like kind of distributed the power differently between global powers and countries. And then the rise of extremist groups also contributed to change of political power. There's a bunch of examples of that from like all the dictators throughout the world at the time. And then oh yeah, the Tutsi in Rwanda was another one, an extremist group led to genocide and stuff. Next page. There were economic policies that changed after the Cold War and changed world politics on a global scale. And then the United States and Europe were the world leaders at the time, but with contrasting views, the United States with democracy and the communist Soviet Union, there were struggles around the world that came from these two. So first off, communist nations supported repressive policies, silencing the people and putting them in horrible conditions. And then in return, there were plans made such as the Great Leap Forward, which did not work, obviously. And it tried to introduce a more communist nation to try and make a more agricultural society and ways to improve their economy. Like I just said, it failed greatly and the economy just got worse. And there was a lot of starvation and extreme poverty. And then there were new military alliances and the NATO, yep. And the Warsaw Pact are some examples of that. And then the USSR fell due to its plummeting economy. And then that was the end of the Cold War, collapse of the USSR and stuff. And then this allowed for groups to challenge power and make a name for themselves, because now there's like, because there was like two big powers and then one of them fell. So it's like, now they're not fighting, so then everyone's fighting because they don't know what's happening. And then in Africa, there were new leaders like Nelson Mandela. Okay, I might want to fix that. And offered peace as a way to form political change. And then there were a lot of other minority groups that challenged power. So that's like feminism and religious revivalists and people of color fighting for civil rights. A lot of cultural changes that came with that. And then due to political change, art and literature was changed and it formed into what we have today.
Yeah. Okay, so World War I was originally started by assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand by Barvilo Prince, and he was a Serbian nationalist. And so the Serbian government was blamed by Austria-Hungary, and other nations also blamed them. Um, um, and his assassination was ultimately used as a justification for the questioning of Siberian nationalism. The Serbian and other Baltic nationalists were angry at Austria-Hungary for the rule over the southern Slavic regions that they wanted to be used for the nation of Yugoslavia. So in this war, the Allied powers, which consisted of Great Britain, France, Russia, Italy, Romania, and Japan, and the United States, fought against the Central Powers, which consisted of Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Ottoman Empire. So they were basically convinced that Austria-Hungary was preparing for war. So the Serbian army took it upon themselves to mobilize and appeal to the Russians for assistance. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, and it disrupted the peace between Europe's two great powers. So Germany's first action in World War I was based on the Schiffelin Plan, where they began to fight on two fronts, destructively invading France through the neutral Belgium and confronting Russia to their east. From 1914 to 1916, Russia's army put out several offensives on the World War I's Eastern Front, and they failed due to the strength of the German army. They were defeated on the battlefield, and with that, along with economic instability and scarcity of many resources, this led to the Russian Revolution, and it was mainly led by the peasants and the working class against the Tsar Nicholas II and his wife. So it was led by Vladimir Lenin and the Bolsheviks. The Russian Revolution ended Tsarist rule and brought halt to Russia's participation in World War I. The United States originally tried to stay neutral in the war, and they stood on the sidelines of World War I, but Germany repeatedly sank U.S. merchant ships. President Woodrow Wilson eventually declared war on Germany, and the United States was officially involved in the war. The war ended with the signing of the Treaty of Versailles, blaming Germany for starting the war, and imposed penalties in the terms of loss of territory, reparation payments, and demilitarization. And World War I was mainly fought using trench warfare in the Western Front, but it also was fought through aviation and on water.
Go ahead.
So next is the interwar period. And during the interwar period, many nations faced economic depression. The Treaty of Versailles was signed in 1919, but the blame on Germany, leading Germany to fall into great debt with no means to pay out due to many losses in the war. So Germany was especially hit hard by the economic depression due to the reparations that they were made to pay for the blame that was put on them for World War I. The League of Nations was established, and it intended to create a peace between the nations by having peaceful negotiations instead of forcefulness and war. But this would later prove to be a failure. Benito Mussolini took power in Italy in 1922. He was a fascist dictator who started fascist movement and would later ally with Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler came into power in Germany because of his support for the working class, who were heavily affected by the economic depression, and because of his support for them, he basically won the whatever election was going on. Vladimir Lenin dies and Joseph Stalin is made as a successor in 1924. The stock market crashes in the United States, creating more economic unrest, along with casualties of the First World War. Japan invades Manchuria, strengthening tension between them and China. And after losing in a democratic election, Adolf Hitler is elected as the Chancellor of Germany in 1933, which leads to his dictatorship in Germany. October of 1935, Italy invades Ethiopia as an attempt to expand territory for Germany. This was because Ethiopia was one of the last remaining independent nations in Africa, since most of Africa was under colonial rule from some European power. And in 1938, Germany wants to unite with Austria in exchange for peace. If not, war will occur. In September of 1938, the Munich Pact is created between Italy, France, Nazi Germany, and Britain, made to ensure no military violence. Germany breaks this pact and invades Poland, starting World War II. And the war begins when Germany invades the Soviet Union.
Question, hang on. Okay, actually, well, obviously I don't have a question, but so does someone want to explain this picture right here? Okay, someone explain this picture, please.
Isn't that the picture from the United States, because they're like the keystone in the bridge?
Yes.
Oh, because then they proposed the League of Nations and then they didn't actually join it. So then
Yes.
it was just really like bad.
Good job. There we go. Participation.
There we go. World War II. Before we get started on this section, can anyone tell me how the Treaty of Versailles led to the beginning of World War II, or how it played into it? Yes.
It put Germany in debt and they couldn't pay back the debt. So they were like economic depression, and Hitler was like using it as like the reason to get into power. And was like his main negotiating tool, I guess.
Yeah. So, Treaty of Versailles. Obviously sparked World War II because of the failure of appeasement and the rise of militarism in Japan and Germany, and the fail of the League of Nations, which we kind of just talked about. The Treaty of Versailles, when Germany was blamed for starting World War I, and major debts and reparations were placed onto the nation, one certain Adolf Hitler of the Nazi Party was heavily opposed to this treaty. In 1933, after Hitler became Chancellor of Germany, he anointed himself as the Führer and believed he had the ability to fix Germany after the Treaty of Versailles, thus getting the working class on his side even more. Hitler began rearrangement of Germany, which was a major violation of the Treaty of Versailles, which stated that Germany was not allowed to become militarized again. Hitler signed alliances with Hitler signed alliances with Italy and Japan against Russia. In 1938, Hitler sent troops into Austria. In the following year, annexed Czechoslovakia. His aggression managed to stay unchecked by other world powers because the United States and Soviet Union were more focused on internal conflicts, with Britain and France were not eager for confrontation. Can anyone tell me why Britain and France did not want to get into the confrontation with Germany?
Because they're still recovering from World War I.
Yes. This caused France and Britain to declare, I missed something, sorry. In 1939, Hitler, the Soviet leader, Hitler and Joseph Stalin signed the German-Soviet non-aggression pact behind the rest of the world's back, which meant that Hitler would not face war on two fronts once he invaded Poland, and would have Soviet assistance in conquering and dividing the nation. This caused France and Britain to declare war on Germany, like I said, because it was done behind all their backs, and that was part of the Treaty of Versailles. In Operation Barbarossa, Germany had two objectives, which were to invade the Soviet Union so that the Aryan race, or German master race, could get could once and for all gain territory that they needed to essentially become the biggest international power, and to set up concentration camps to eliminate and eradicate the Jewish population. This later turned into the mass genocide of the Jewish population, which you all know, the Holocaust. While in the Pacific, the Japanese were at war with China that was expanding as well as seizing the European colonial holdings, which prompted the United States to handle the Japanese combat. That would later ensue in the bombing of Pearl Harbor, which the Japanese attacked America, causing the US to join World War II. And then Germany and other Axis powers claimed war with the US. But in 1943, an Allied victory took very probable as British and American defeated Italian and German troops in North Africa, which directly resulted in the fall of the Italian leader Mussolini's government. The Soviet Union counteroffers had launched, which ended the Battle of Stalingrad and spelled out the Soviet victory and a German surrender. In 1944, D-Day occurred, which was a mass invasion of the Allied powers into Western Europe. Germany had attempted to fight the Allies off with the last remaining troops they had, but however, in 1945, an intense aerial bombing forced Germany to surrender. World War II's end was discussed at the Potsdam Conference, in which President Harry Truman, Winston Churchill, and Stalin all discussed the division of Germany into 4 occupation zones and the surrender of the Japanese. The Japanese later surrendered after the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki by the United States in 1945 as well. And I'm going to cover mass atrocities also. So there were a lot of mass atrocities and genocides happening around the world at the time. First and most well known was the Holocaust. And then there's also the Rwandan genocide of the Tutsis, of the Hutus killing the Tutsis because of religious conflict and more or less colonization in Africa. Then there was the firebombing of Japan when Japan broke the agreement with the US, and the US bombed Tokyo, resulting in over 100,000 Tokyo citizens' deaths. And then there was, of course, the Armenian genocide. The Turkish government organized that mass starvation and the murder of the Armenian citizens.
Okay, cool. So this is the Cold War. And so this basically came about because even though the United States and the USSR were like allies in World War II, it was out of defense. Like if they weren't, they were kind of reluctant to get together, but they both agreed that Germany sucked. So the main difference that caused this tension and conflict was the economic ideologies of these two powers. Obviously, the USSR was communist and the United States is capitalist. Those are like polar opposites. And it was difficult for them to coexist because the USSR was trying to influence countries throughout Europe to be communist. And then the United States was like, that's not cool. So they were like, they did containment. So they wanted to stop the influence coming from the USSR so that the US could still have like a decent amount of influence. So that is where it started. And then there was the emergence of nuclear weapons and the fear of communism in the United States. And then by the time World War II ended, most American officials agreed that the best way to combat the fear of Soviet communism was containment. And it was this foreign policy composed of several strategies to help combat the USSR's plan. And so that started a lot of competitions. There was 2 races, the arms race and the space race. The arms race was pretty self-explanatory. Like the 2 countries were working to like see who could make the deadliest weapons, or like they were just trying to like build their like military power to like fight the other. So they just kept going back and forth with that. And then the space race, kind of the same thing, but with like rocket ships and stuff and satellites. And I'm just gonna move to the next page. So in the space race, the Soviets were still one step ahead because they launched the first man into space in 1961. But the Americans, or we, USA, they made a promise to launch a manned flight to the moon, and that came true in 1969 when Neil Armstrong stepped foot onto the moon. This made the US astronauts out to be true American heroes and the Soviets to be villains in their efforts to surpass the United States. So the USSR grew abroad when the USSR backed North Korean People's Army against their Western supported southern neighbor, which sparked more fear into the Americans as they thought this was the first step to a communist campaign to take over the world. Going back to 1949, the United States and several other countries, including Canada and Western European nations, formed the National Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, to provide selective security against the Soviet Union. And in 1955, NATO made West Germany a member. And in response to this action, the Soviet Union created the Warsaw Pact, which compromised many Balkan and Eastern European nations, including East Germany. In 1962, the Soviets installed many of their nuclear weapons in Cuba, which resulted in a 13-day standoff between the United States and the Soviets, and this was the Cuban Missile Crisis. And then the Cold War was the Cold War abroad. Oh wait, I actually want to talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis for a second. That basically ended, just for review, like it ended because there was an agreement between the two that the USSR would take their missiles out of Cuba if the United States would take their missiles out of Turkey, I believe. Okay, yep. And then they're like, okay, that's cool. And then the Cold War abroad was also clearly seen in Vietnam, where the collapse of the French colonial regime, yes, led to a struggle between the American-backed nationalists, I cannot say that, and the communists, I also cannot say that.
No Din Diem and Ho Chi Minh.
There you go. Yep. All right. The ultimate end of the Cold War can be seen through the development of the glasnost and perestroika policies within the Soviet Union, which allowed political openness and economic reform, respectively. The most visible symbol of the Cold War, the Berlin Wall, was also destroyed, therefore integrating the two separated halves of Berlin. Yay. Okay. So, no?
Here you go. I had to recopy their.
Oh, yes.
Don't worry, I had to recopy the next periods because they
Uh-huh.
changed it also.
I have a short little demonstration kind of about how the US was trying to convince the citizens how the spread of communism worked. So someone raise your hand if you want to be a volunteer.
Yeah.
Okay, Lucia. Lucia. Oh, I didn't even say that, did I? Okay, well, so. So, if you are within one seat of Lucia, you have to stand up as well.
Yeah, there you go.
In the back too, yeah. So, Lucia
All
is a
your
communist.
contact trace and you have to go home. Oh, never mind, sorry,
Oh,
bad joke.
Lucia is a communist. The rest of you are capitalistic Americans. This is Lucia's close friend group, which she has turned into communists. Now, everyone who's one seat away from the people standing up, stand up also.
Okay, all right.
Can you bring me a Kleenex, please?
Where?
Now, everyone's turned their friends into communists. And now you three can stand up also.
That's-
So,
If you are
No.
standing, you are a communist now.
yeah, basically. So everyone's communist.
Yeah.
But everyone sit down except for Lucia. What the US was trying to convince its citizens was helpful was if Lucia was dead, I'm sorry, I love you. If she was dead, she would not be able to spread communism to your friends. So you had to weed out your local communists because the best communist is a dead one. You can sit down. That's the end of my whole thing.
Yeah. Okay. That was, okay, yeah, all right. So satellite states. Satellite states were communist nations in Europe that were formally independent on an international perspective, but under heavy political, economic, and military influence from the USSR. Who wants to say some examples of satellite states? Let's go. Come on. Yeah, Hannah. Ukraine. All right. Someone else. Come on, please. This would be so
Belarus.
cool. All right. Thank you. You guys are
Moldova,
Mr. Burnett, you know all of this.
Lithuania, Latvia,
Who did?
Estonia,
Oh, there you go. Sorry, I did not see your hand.
Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan,
Sir.
Georgia.
You were talking about engaging the class. You're
I know.
stealing the show.
They need to do it. They need to talk.
Yeah, come on, guys.
Lucy,
is Certainly is.
Yes.
Come on. What is going on here? Why aren't you guys saying anything? Do you not know examples?
They don't know.
You don't know this? We're talking about it.
What have you learned?
You.
Oh, you've already yelled at him, so it's okay, go ahead.
No.
Give an example.
Give an example of
Oh,
satellite
wait,
state.
stop. What'd you say?
Do you know an example of a satellite state?
Yeah.
What is it?
Give some. List them. Come on.
There's satellite on Dave Matthews Band.
No. Absolutely not.
Like the Soviet Union,
Yeah.
they were a country that had like
They were
Estonia,
influencing-
Latvia, all these.
Oh,
countries,
yeah. There you go.
Huh?
You know more than that.
Well, yeah, because they're 14. and-
They're not talking. We're
You know, when I
trying
was
to
alive, the
engage the
Soviet Union was
class.
actually a thing. No, it was only 30 years ago.
Okay, sorry, continue.
Oh, okay. Anyways.
You're young.
Hey.
And I'm happy about it.
Are you calling? Anyways. Okay, so starting with Russians leader Lenin and branching out to Mao Zedong's China to Cuba under the rule of Fidel Castro, Lenin created a 5-year plan to push Russia out of its agriculture-based economy, my bad, into an industrialized one, which caused many citizens to be forced into labor. The
Yeah,
Iron
okay.
Curtain.
Excuse me.
Okay. The Iron Curtain was made to establish communist regimes all throughout Europe. And communism had the most influence during the Cold War. And in China, Mao Zedong created an alliance with Russia, creating 2 strong communist countries, which was a huge threat to the United States, obviously. Yes,
Yeah, but didn't they turn sour on
I'll
each
still run
other as their?
Is he in the front right now?
It's right there.
you are so true, Hannah. You are so true. Everyone, round of applause.
Yeah.
Yeah. Write that down, write that down.
Which one's Hannah?
Right there. Sorry, that was not an insult. I love your hair. It's great. Okay.
What about mine?
Wait, with what you have left, it's great. Oh my god. I'm sorry.
I mean, I wouldn't have said anything if I didn't know. I know what I am.
You and Will are having a contest.
You've been bald.
I know.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really sad one.
Hey, what's your name?
Jill.
Jill. Bless your heart, just wait.
Okay.
You'll be.
At least you're not gray.
I'd rather be gray.
All right, anyways,
Okay.
presentation.
On that note.
Yes, Jill. 25, you said?
Okay, communism had the most influence during the Cold War, and then there was the alliance, and then this would have devastating effects on Chinese citizens, and millions would die in labor camps or of starvation, as an obvious issue. And then Japan loses to Korea, which leads to the split of the nation between North and South Korea. And then North Korea became Soviet occupied while the South was the United States influenced and occupied. Many people died in the fight to spread communism. And then America wanted to stop the spread of communism, obviously, entirely due to the threat it imposed to them. So the Truman Doctrine was created to contain communism, and it led.
Group number 5. Sorry, Jill.
That's all right, Mr. Dickerson.
You know who
I do.
All right. It led to the U.S. to wars in Korea and Vietnam to help prevent communist takeover. What is so funny? Okay. Am I being aggressive? I'm not trying to be. I'm sorry. Okay, anyways, after the Cold War, the Soviet Union fell, leading to the fall of communism. And then capitalism spread, it became popular and such and so forth. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Try it again.
There we go. Okay. So after the Cold War, many Asian and African colonies gained independence, but this came with many struggles due to the fact that they were not used to being independent. There was internal rivalries between the different social and ethnic groups, and they were very underdeveloped. Many nationalist leaders who led the colonized people to be independent tried to help them, which proved to be very successful, promoting rapid economic development. It's harder to provide resources such as food and clean water to the starving countries. So an urbanization process also began, which led to the mass migration into large cities. The percentage of humans living in cities was over 50% for the first time in history. Okay. Unequal wealth distribution was seen through the crowded slums and shanty towns that were within 20 minutes of the largest cities that were tall, modern skyscrapers, very wealthy. Many nations were met with environmental degradation, which harmed local ecosystems, slow depletion, which negatively impacted farmers, and industrial pollution, which contaminated many important resources, such as clean drinking water. Feminist movements for women's rights were challenged by religious revivalism, which is an approach to religious belief and practice that stressed that literal interpretation of texts sacred to the religion in question, as it promoted many ideas, which included harsh punishments to women and who practice adultery. Okay, so new nations after colonization. So after decolonization, many nations were not able to establish a strong enough economy to support themselves. Many nations, like I said previously, were still dependent on stronger nations' resources due to the fact that most important resources were drained or not easily available. These new independent colonies relied on others, and there was no room for growth because of this. Independent nations often had agriculture-based economies that were extremely outdated and not stable enough to support the economy. The U.S. offered support, giving military assistance, resources to help boost growing economies, and these newly found nations adopted government styles of the West in order to gain some form of economic balance. Yep. Okay.
Whatever, today.
Yes.
Thank you.
Cool.
Wait, you guys are finished for today?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Are
let's give
there,
them a round of applause for their first 2/3. I could just get everybody's attention, just after spending some time analyzing this packet. The text is a little bit larger than maybe you're used to, but there's hundreds, literally hundreds of key vocab terms in here. So if I was a student, let's put myself back in grad school like 2 years ago, I would probably have a highlighter out and be underlining the vocab words, just making sure that I have a clear understanding of each one. For example, on the first page, things that I would have probably highlighted. I guess the first page is kind of vague, but if you go to like World War I, I would highlight Gavrilo Princip, Serbia, Bosnia Herzegovina, alliance systems, etc. Okay, and the pain points in this time period, I'm going to be brutally honest. The pain points are going to be decolonization. I have a solid. I really do think there's. If I have to make a guess, you're going to have questions about decolonization, and then this last part on Asian and African colonies after independence. Not just decolonization, but the challenges that what is quote unquote the third world countries faced. Remember, those were countries that were not influenced. Grace, can you listen to that text, please? Yeah. Thank you. Those were the countries that were not influenced directly by the US or the USSR, but were kind of left on their own to deal with the superpowers at war during the Cold War. Okay, does that make sense? So majority of newly formed countries in Africa, other areas around the world, such as India, Latin America during this time period, I don't think we got there yet, but you had all the communist movements in Latin America that we talked about for a whole chapter and how the US influenced them. So tonight I would key in on that kind of stuff. I think most of you know the war is okay. You probably can identify World War I, World War II starts, causes, all that. Make sure you identify how other places around the world were affected by the world wars.
Are you telling us or them?
Telling everybody.
Okay.
Like, that's what I think is gonna be on the exam. We're getting to crunch time now. So, again, you need to figure out your own pain points and where you need to study. That's the difference between independent and dependent studying. I hope, like yesterday, that I went on late last night and I checked, we have a handful of people. I don't remember all the names. I know a lot of people have started on my AP. I want to give props to, I think Kaylee Cross, I know you finished for sure. Kraus, you finished all of them, right?
I did, yes.
Who else? Hannah?
I'm really close.
No. Did Lucy McJunkins finish all of them?
No.
Anyone, raise your hand in the room if you finished them all. Lily Dole did. That was who
Oh,
it
yeah,
was.
Haley, good job, Lily.
Who else? Anybody else? Okay, so remember, those are due Thursday night. And a couple of people were all green or really dark green, meaning shooting for a 4 or 5, which made me pleasantly surprised. So if you take them really fast and don't pay attention, you're probably gonna have that yellow color. Or maybe you just need to practice more. So on that note, that's the only real homework tonight. This group will have finished this packet tomorrow and one activity, and I will have, I'm torn between practicing SAQ or multiple choice tomorrow. We'll see what happens, okay? All right, have a great day, everybody at home. Thanks for your participation. Okay, group.